General Hospital spoilers for Thursday, January 29th reveal that for Carly, life in Port Charles had always been a constant balancing act, tangled relationships, shifting alliances, and battles to maintain control of the empire she had fought so hard to build. But recently, it felt like the weight of everything was finally beginning to lift. The tension that had defined so much of her life seemed to momentarily dissipate when, to her surprise, she received some rare good news. It wasn't just a minor victory, it was a shift in momentum that Carly hadn't seen coming. Lucas, her beloved son, had always been a pillar of strength, even when things were tough. But lately, his life had been shaken by the influence of Marco, someone Carly had never fully trusted. The relationship between them had always been fragile, but things had taken a turn for the worse. The rift between Lucas and Marco had grown so wide that it seemed inevitable, that it would explode at some point. Carly had been waiting for it, but when it finally happened, it wasn't as dramatic as she had imagined. It was more complicated. Lucas was furious, and Marco, typically calm and collected, was caught off guard by the anger he was facing. The two men had always had a complicated dynamic, but now their relationship was fractured beyond repair. Carly could see the cracks forming long before they broke, but the intensity of their confrontation was still a wake-up call. It wasn't just about the tension between them anymore. It was about power, loyalty, and who was willing to do whatever it took to protect what was theirs. Lucas had finally reached his breaking point. Marco's influence had crept into his life in ways that Carly hadn't expected, and now Lucas was fully aware of it. He had realized that Marco wasn't just an outsider trying to influence his decisions. Marco was playing a far deeper game. The trust Lucas had once placed in him was gone, and the anger that bubbled beneath the surface was ready to spill over. Carly couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. She had been warning Lucas about Marco, warning him about getting too close to someone who had a hidden agenda. Now, as the two men clashed, Carly's confidence in her own judgment grew. This was her win. As the confrontation between Lucas and Marco intensified, Carly realized that her son was finally seeing the truth about Marco and, more importantly, about himself. The shift in Lucas wasn't just about anger, it was about him standing up for what he believed in, rejecting the manipulation that had been clouding his judgment. This new side of Lucas, the side that wasn't afraid to challenge Marco, filled Carly with pride. It wasn't just about winning the argument, it was about Lucas reclaiming control over his own life. And Carly saw it as a pivotal moment for him. As Marco tried to deflect, as he always did with charm and smooth words, Carly watched from the sidelines, knowing that Marco was losing his grip on Lucas. The fight wasn't just about who had power, it was about Lucas finally breaking free from Marco's influence and standing firm in his own beliefs. Carly saw it as a shift, a turning point that not only represented Lucas's personal growth, but also signaled a change in the power dynamics in Port Charles. Carly had always known that she could fight for control of her business, her family, and her life. But witnessing Lucas's confrontation with Marco was a reminder that sometimes the real battle was about reclaiming trust and standing firm in the face of manipulation. As Marco left in frustration, the weight of the moment settled on Carly. She knew it wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of hope. She wasn't alone in this fight. Lucas was finally taking the reins of his own life. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Carly allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. This rare good news, this moment of victory, felt like a breath of fresh air after months of tension and uncertainty. Carly had fought for her family, for Lucas's happiness, and for their future. She had always known that there would be battles, but she never imagined that the real victory would come from watching her son grow stronger and more independent. She had worried for so long about Lucas being influenced by others, but now, seeing him stand up to Marco, she realized that he had finally come into his own. For Carly, the battle for power wasn't just about the empire she had built, it was about protecting her family and ensuring their happiness. As Lucas stood his ground against Marco, Carly saw the power of her own influence reflected in him. This was the kind of victory that mattered, the kind of victory that solidified her belief in herself and in her family. For once, it wasn't about outsmarting the competition, it was about building something stronger than manipulate. Iron, trust, loyalty, and love. Carly's confidence soared in the wake of Lucas's success. She had been right all along, and now she had proof. Marco had lost, and Lucas had gained something even more valuable than the confrontation itself. He had regained his self-respect and independence. It wasn't just a small victory. It was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Carly and Lucas, but for everyone involved. Carly knew that things would never be the same again, but for the first time in a long time, she felt as though the future was finally in her hands. As Carly moved forward, she knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but this moment, the one where she saw Lucas take control of his life, was a reminder that she had everything she needed to face whatever came next. With her family standing strong and Lucas proving his resilience, Carly was ready to take on whatever the future held. The battle was far from over, but with this victory, Carly knew that she was on the right path. The tides were turning, and she was ready to ride the wave of change. Molly had always been a reserved person, someone who carefully chose when and with whom she would share her thoughts and feelings. For years, she had kept her emotions tightly guarded, never letting anyone in too far. But there was one person who had slowly but surely broken down those walls: Cody. With him, she found a sense of peace, a quiet understanding that she had never felt with anyone else. As Molly navigated the complexities of her life, the struggles and pressures that seemed to weigh on her, she found that Cody was the one person she could turn to. It wasn't just that he listened, it was that he understood. His unwavering support, his calm presence, and his ability to offer comfort in ways that didn't feel intrusive made him the person Molly knew she could confide in, no matter the situation. Cody didn't judge her. He accepted her for who she was, flaws and all. In him, she found a rare trust, a person she could rely on without fear of rejection or misunderstanding. Lately, the relationship between them had been evolving. What began as friendship had deepened into something more, something stronger and more intimate. Molly had always held back in relationships, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of giving too much of herself. But with Cody, that fear was slowly dissipating. The connection they shared had grown undeniable. It wasn't just the small moments of comfort or shared laughter. It was the way they supported each other, the way they seemed to truly understand one another. Molly realized that she was allowing herself to open up in ways she hadn't done before. She was letting go of her fears, her reservations, and allowing herself to embrace the love and connection that Cody offered so freely. This shift in their dynamic didn't go unnoticed by either of them. As they spent more time together, as they confided in each other more deeply, their bonds strengthened. It wasn't just about romantic gestures or grand declarations of love. It was about the quiet moments of support, the conversations that lasted into the night, the shared experiences that allowed them to see each other's vulnerabilities. They were building something real, something that felt unshakable. Molly knew that what she had with Cody was different from anything she had experienced before. She wasn't used to this level of openness, this kind of emotional connection. It was new, and at times, it was overwhelming. But it was also exhilarating. She was learning to trust him in ways she hadn't trusted anyone, and it was making her feel stronger, more secure in herself. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was truly being seen for who she was. As their relationship continued to evolve, it became clear to both of them that they were on the cusp of something meaningful. They were no longer just two people who enjoyed each other's company, they were partners, navigating the complexities of life together. Molly found herself thinking about Cody constantly, about how their relationship was growing into something that felt like a solid foundation, something that could stand the test of time. The changes in their relationship were subtle but profound. They had moved beyond the initial stages of infatuation, beyond the butterflies and the excitement of getting to know someone new. What they had now was deeper, more grounded. There was a trust between them that felt unspoken, a mutual understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses. They didn't need to be perfect, they just needed to be there for each other, and that was enough. For Molly, this was a revelation. She had always thought that love had to be complicated, that it required grand gestures and dramatic moments. But what she had with Cody was different. It wasn't about trying to be someone she wasn't or pretending to be perfect. It was about being honest, being real, and letting herself be loved without fear. With Cody, she didn't have to pretend. She could be herself, flaws and all, and still feel loved and accepted. The more Molly reflected on their relationship, the more she realized how much it had changed her. She was becoming more confident, more open, and more willing to take risks with her heart. Cody had given her the space to grow, to become the person she had always been meant to be, and she was finally beginning to embrace it. Their relationship was no longer just about two people coming together, it was about the future they were building. Molly could see the potential for something lasting, something that could withstand the challenges life would inevitably throw at them. They were learning, growing, and evolving together, and Molly couldn't help but feel excited about the journey ahead. With Cody by her side, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The changes in their relationship weren't just about romance, they were about growth, trust, and understanding. What Molly and Cody had was special, and as they continued to grow closer, the future seemed brighter than ever. Jason had always been someone who could handle pressure. The chaos and danger that came with his line of work were things he was used to. But this time was different. As the storm raged outside, cutting off power and isolating everyone in its path, Jason found himself in a race against time. Britt, the woman he had once trusted and fought alongside, was trapped in the middle of it all, caught in a blizzard that was growing more dangerous by the minute. Jason didn't hesitate for a second. His mind was clear, his instincts sharp. He knew exactly what needed to be done. He couldn't leave her stranded out there, not after everything that had happened between them. As the snow piled higher and the winds howled louder, Jason scrambled to gather what he needed to find her. The weather was working against him, but it wasn't enough to stop him. He couldn't afford to waste time. Britt's life was at risk, and Jason wasn't about to let her face this alone. As he moved quickly, Jason's thoughts flashed back to the moments before the storm hit. The sudden disappearance of communication, the unclear warnings from weather experts, it all felt too sudden, too deliberate. But he pushed those thoughts aside. There was no time to dwell on anything other than getting to Britt. But even as he fought through the snow and ice, Jason's mind couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. There was a bigger picture at play, one that involved more than just Britt's safety. The storm had seemed almost too convenient. It wasn't just the weather, it felt like a deliberate attempt to keep everyone isolated, to prevent anyone from getting to Britt before it was too late. But who would want her trapped in such a dangerous situation? Jason couldn't help but think that there was more to this than just the storm. As he fought his way through the harsh elements, he felt the pressure mounting. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to stop him from saving Britt, they were hiding something, and Jason was determined to uncover it. When he finally reached the location where Britt was supposed to be, he found the signs of her struggle footprints, signs of panic, the telltale marks of someone trying to make their way through the blizzard. Jason's heart raced. He was so close now, but the storm had taken its toll. Britt was out there, somewhere, and the longer he waited, the more dangerous the situation became. His mind raced, trying to piece together what was going on. Why hadn't anyone else been able to reach her? Who else was out there, pulling the strings, making sure she stayed hidden? Just as Jason was about to move further into the storm, a figure appeared out of the snow. Britt, looking exhausted and terrified, stumbled toward him, her face pale, her clothes caked with ice and snow. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Relief washed over him, but it was short-lived. The look in Britt's eyes wasn't just one of fear, it was one of knowing something Jason didn't. She barely managed to speak, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Jason, they're coming," she said, her breath coming in sharp gasps. This wasn't just the storm. There's someone behind it. Jason's heart sank. Britt's words sent a chill through him, colder than the snowstorm itself. The storm had been a distraction, a way to keep them apart, to keep them from uncovering something far more dangerous. Britt wasn't just trapped by the weather, she was trapped by a conspiracy, much larger than they had anticipated. As the full implications of what Britt was saying began to sink in, Jason knew that this wasn't just about saving her. There were bigger forces at play, and if they didn't act fast, they would be caught in the middle of something they couldn't control. He had to get her to safety. But Jason was already planning his next move, whatever secrets Britt had been hiding. Whatever this new danger was, He was ready to face it head-on. The storm outside wasn't the only threat they were facing, and Jason would do whatever it took to stop it before it was too late. Britt's sudden appearance in the storm, her cryptic words, and the danger lurking in the shadows were only the beginning. Jason could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on him, but he wasn't about to back down. He had always fought for what was right, and now, with Britt by his side, he was ready to uncover the truth no matter where it took him. The stakes had just been raised, and the world they knew was about to shift in ways neither of them could anticipate. Nathan stood at the edge of the storm, both literally and figuratively. His mind was swirling with regret, replaying the moments when he had let his guard down. There had been warning small signs, strange behaviors that he had ignored, and now Charlotte, the one person he had thought he could trust, was causing a chain of events that he could no longer control. For weeks, Nathan had been noticing things that didn't add up. Charlotte's actions had become erratic, unpredictable, and increasingly dangerous. At first, Nathan had chalked it up to her stress, to the pressure she had been under with her family, and the tension in her personal life. But as time went on, he realized that something far more sinister was unfolding right before his eyes. Charlotte, once a person he thought he understood, had become a catalyst for chaos, and he had been too distracted, too careless, to stop it before it escalated. As the situation worsened, Nathan began to understand the full extent of his mistakes. His failure to stay vigilant, to trust his instincts, had led to Charlotte's dangerous actions. And now, everything was spiraling out of control. He had once thought he could handle anything, but this was different. Charlotte wasn't just causing problems, she was creating a crisis, one that was bigger than anything he had faced before. The news hit Nathan like a ton of bricks. Charlotte's involvement in the recent events was not just coincidental. Her actions were deliberate, calculated, and part of a much larger plan. What had started as a personal issue for Charlotte had become a threat to everyone around her. And Nathan, despite his training, had been blind to it. His own involvement in her life had clouded his judgment, and now, as the truth came to light, the full scope of the danger they were facing was becoming clear. What was even more troubling was how deeply Charlotte was entangled in the web of danger. She had spun. Nathan realized that she wasn't just a passive participant in the events. She had become an active player, orchestrating a series of moves that had the potential to devastate everything in their path. She had been manipulating situations, hiding the truth, and leading them all into a trap. Nathan had let his feelings for her blind him to the reality of the situation. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price for it. The weight of his regret was crushing. He had failed Charlotte as a protector, as a person who should have seen the warning signs and acted before things went too far. But it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the fallout of her actions, the damage she had caused, the lives at stake. And now, Nathan was left with the task of trying to undo the destruction, of cleaning up the mess that he had allowed to happen. The consequences were already unfolding. Charlotte's dangerous behavior had set off a chain reaction that was spreading rapidly. What Nathan had once considered a manageable problem was now a full-blown catastrophe. He could see the damage in the eyes of those affected by Charlotte's decisions, and the realization hit him like a wave. This wasn't just about a betrayal. It was about a catastrophe that could change everything. Nathan's regret turned into a sense of responsibility. He knew he had to act fast, to stop Charlotte before she caused any more harm. But as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, he realized that the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed. Charlotte wasn't just a bystander in this chaos, she was at the center of it, and she had been playing everyone around her. It wasn't just about stopping Charlotte, it was about preventing a disaster from escalating further. Nathan's mind raced with strategies, with plans to take control of the situation before it completely unraveled. But every move he made felt like it was too late. Charlotte's influence had already taken hold, and now Nathan was fighting against a clock, trying to fix the damage before it consumed everyone involved. The regret Nathan felt was overwhelming. He had trusted Charlotte, allowed his emotions to cloud his judgment, and in doing so, had allowed the situation to spiral out of control. The danger was now clear, and there was no going back. Nathan had to stop Charlotte, no matter the cost. But even as he prepared for the fight ahead, He couldn't shake the feeling that he had already lost the trust of those around him, lost control of the situation, and lost the chance to prevent the chaos that had been set into motion. Charlotte had caused a new kind of danger, one that Nathan hadn't seen coming. And now, with everything hanging in the balance, he was left to pick up the pieces, trying to undo the harm she had caused, all while battling the weight of his own guilt. The consequences of his failure were only beginning, and Nathan knew that this catastrophe was far from over.